Imagine waking up in a country where wages keep rising, student debt doesn't exist, healthcare actually works, and people leave work early enough to enjoy life, while still running a globally competitive economy. Now imagine that country quietly outperforming the UK year after year, without oil wealth, without tech monopolies, and without magic. That country is Denmark. If you're serious about understanding what real economic change looks like, not slogans, not politics, but systems that actually work, watch this video all the way to the end. Because the lesson Denmark teaches isn't just about taxes, it's about choices. How Danish living standards surpass the UK. Imagine an economy built on high wages, low household debt, reliable public services, short working weeks, and free university education. Now contrast that with the UK's reality: stagnant wages, rising personal debt, unaffordable housing, and endless waiting lists for basic services. These two countries once stood on similar footing, but today Denmark has surged ahead. Denmark now ranks as the second happiest country in the world, with exceptionally high trust in institutions and some of the lowest corruption levels globally. Yet there's a catch, and critics love to point it out. Denmark also collects more tax than almost any country on earth, with government revenue at roughly 46% of GDP. The UK, by comparison, collected just 29% of GDP in 1993, and even today sits around 37%, still far below the Danish model. The big question is unavoidable. Should the UK copy Denmark's high tax, high service system, or would it collapse under its own weight? High taxes, high growth, the Danish surprise. Since the 2008 financial crisis, much of Western Europe has struggled to grow. Britain's economy limped forward, Germany slowed, France stagnated. Yet Denmark emerged as one of the strongest performers, second only to Ireland. This completely shatters the myth that high taxes automatically kill growth. Denmark is not a socialist command economy. The government doesn't run private companies. Entrepreneurs are free to invest, hire, innovate, and expand. What makes the difference is what taxes buy: world-class infrastructure, an elite education system, modern healthcare, and a social safety net that reduces risk for both workers and businesses. For companies, this means lower hidden costs. Workers are healthier, skills are higher, training is better, productivity rises. As a result, GDP per capita in Denmark now comfortably exceeds the UK's, and the gap has widened over time, not narrowed. Yes, prices are higher, but despite that, actual consumption levels remain among the highest in Europe. Danes aren't poor, they're paying collectively instead of individually. Fewer hours, higher pay. The productivity secret one of the most shocking differences between the two countries isn't wages, it's time. Denmark has some of the lowest annual working hours in the developed world, yet its workers earn more on average than their UK counterparts. How is that possible? The answer is labor productivity, output per worker. Denmark's economy isn't propped up by oil wealth or aggressive tax avoidance. Strip those away and it becomes one of the most productive economies on earth, second only to the United States. The workforce is highly skilled, well-trained, and supported by efficient public systems that allow people to focus on work rather than survival. Industries are diverse, but one standout success is pharmaceuticals, especially Novo Nordisk, whose diabetes and weight loss drugs have reshaped global healthcare markets. Ironically, the company's success is now so massive that Denmark worries about becoming too dependent on it, a problem most countries would love to have. Housing, education, and the cost of living divide. Housing tells a brutal story. In the UK, house prices have spiraled far beyond incomes, pushing home ownership out of reach for younger generations and driving homelessness to some of the highest levels in the Western world. In Denmark, housing costs take up a smaller share of income, and price-to-income ratios are far lower. Education is even more stark. In Denmark, students pay zero tuition fees. In England, graduates leave university with over £40,000 in debt before earning their first full paycheck. To fund these services, Denmark relies heavily on consumption taxes. VAT sits at 25%, compared to 20% in the UK. Capital gains are taxed at 42% versus 28%, and top income earners pay up to 52%, compared to the UK's 45%. Yet despite all this, Denmark still manages to feel less financially stressful for ordinary citizens, because basic needs are already covered: debt, energy, and long-term thinking. One of Denmark's biggest advantages is something Britain has steadily lost: fiscal room to maneuver. Danish government debt is relatively low. UK debt, meanwhile, has exploded, rising from around 40% of GDP to nearly 100% in just 2 decades. That debt burden limits future choices and makes every crisis more painful. When energy prices surged, Denmark felt the shock, but far less than the UK. Prices rose about 14% compared to 22% in Britain. Why? Better insulation standards, smarter urban planning, and decades of commitment to renewable energy. Today, 43% of Denmark's primary energy comes from renewables. Cycling rates are double those of the UK. Environmental policy isn't trapped in culture wars. It's treated as infrastructure, not ideology. Inequality, trust, and social cohesion. Denmark has one of the lowest inequality levels in the world. Taxes and benefits matter, but so does something harder to measure: social trust. Danish society is relatively classless. Wealth and family background matter less in determining education, income, and home ownership. In the UK, an unwritten class system still quietly shapes opportunity, often before a child even starts school. This cohesion explains why Danes accept high taxes. They trust the system, they believe others are paying their fair share, and they can see tangible results. Both countries share similarities: independent currencies, staying outside the euro, and political tensions around migration. But Denmark's stronger social contract makes difficult trade-offs politically possible. Why the Danish model might not work in the UK. Yet so why doesn't Britain just copy Denmark? There are 3 hard truths. First, Denmark expanded its welfare state during the 1960s and 70s, when growth was strong and wages were rising. The UK today faces stagnant incomes. Raising taxes now could hit disposable income before benefits are felt, worsening short-term pain. Second, higher taxes don't guarantee better services. UK public sector productivity has been weak, particularly in healthcare. NHS spending as a share of GDP is already similar to Denmark's, yet outcomes lag due to management, digitization, and efficiency issues. Third, there is limited political and cultural support for higher taxes in the UK. Politicians fear backlash, and history suggests that fear isn't unfounded. Denmark isn't perfect. It has social challenges of its own. But compared internationally, it consistently performs at the top, not because of luck, but because of long-term choices. Final thought. The real lesson: Denmark's success isn't about copying tax rates. It's about trust, productivity, and investing early, before crisis forces your hand. The real question isn't whether the UK can afford the Danish model, it's whether it can afford not to learn from it. If this video made you rethink what's possible, like it, share it, and subscribe. Because real change starts with understanding how the systems around us actually work.